Hey, it's George, and welcome to the Call to Adventure podcast. We're on a mission to help create happier people and a healthier planet. So let's get after it.
I had about 20 days notice before having to race, and I was really not prepared. Practically killed me. I came out of that with 2 broken ribs and bulging disc into my spine, which cut off feeling to my right hand and right arm.
Hey, it's George, and welcome to the Call to Adventure podcast. We're on a mission to help create happier people and a healthier planet. So let's get after it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Call to Adventure podcast with me, George Beasley. I hope you're all good listeners. We've got a goodie today. So I'm here again with my co-hosts Ed Bassett from Camp 2 and Becca Heaps from Tent Share, and we'll be chatting with Alex Flynn. So co-hosts, how are we doing? Ed, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. We've at work. Camp 2 is very busy. So but the sun's shining. All good.
Good stuff. How about you, Becca?
All good here. Lots of people are uploading their tents onto the Tent Share website now, which is brilliant to see. Every little ping I'm hearing is great. And people are starting to rent out the tents. So all good in Tent Share world.
That's really good to hear. Good stuff. People go and check out Camp 2 if you're up for a camper, or Tent Share if you're looking for a tent.
And how are you, George?
I'm excellent, thank you. Adventures are being planned.
Nice.
Thanks for asking, Ed.
Cool. Okie
dokes. Well, let's crack on. So, Alex, we're going to hear all about your adventures and your tale, but we like to kick off with some quick fire questions that are just a bit silly and pointless, but it's quite fun to do them at the start. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favourite cheese?
Cheese. It's a French cheese called Morbier. It's got a line of ash down the middle of it, and it's really stinky, and it's fantastic, and I love it. In fact, I used to live in France, and I'd come back every 2 weeks to see my sons, and I'd go down to Tesco, and I'd reach over the counter and pick up the cheese in the cellophane and smell it, and this woman turned around to me one time and said, "You can't do that." I said, "Of course you can, because you don't know if the cheese is ripe. You've got to have ripe cheese. Morbier, stinky cheese."
It sounds wonderful. I do like a good old stinky cheese. I think it actually tells you a lot about a person, depending on the type of cheese they like. So surprisingly insightful, that one. Okay, Alex, number 2. Ray Mears or Bear Grylls?
Bear. And the reason why is because there's only so many times you want to whittle a wooden spoon. You know? Plus, I met Bear and I know him. And he's a great guy.
Very cool.
And I've got time for Bear. So no offense to Ray Mears then as well, because he's very knowledgeable. But I think his spoon whittling is very, very good.
His spoon whittling is fantastic. A lot harder than...
Alex, did you say you met Bear?
Yeah, I met Bear.
Oh, wow. Is he a nice fella, is he?
He's a nice fella. I met him at an outdoor fair in Germany. It was equipment and everything was being paraded by lots of different manufacturers, one of which was Gerber, which makes the knives for him. And he had a whole press call, with a room full of media and press.
Yeah.
So I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm the guy with Parkinson's who ran around the planet." And everybody turned around and said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "How can I help?" And I said, "Just wondering if you ever did anything, would you like to do something with me?" And we had a long chat. He was really kind. Yeah,
nice.
Really nice guy.
Very cool.
Nice.
What an intro. Do you just drop the mic after you say that? "Hi, I'm the guy with Parkinson's that ran around the world." You can't really top that, can you? It's a very powerful, quick intro. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Insightful. We still haven't had anybody for Ray Mears. So I think we need to try and find somebody who's really wholesome. I thought last week we were gonna get someone who was all about Ray, but
Spoon aficionados might help.
Yeah, bushcraft instructors maybe. Okay, last one, Alex. Cats or dogs?
Dogs, because I'm allergic to cats.
As good a reason as any. Okie dokes. Well, there we go. Good quick intro.
Yeah, I love cats, but can't touch them.
Yeah, well, there we go. And let's face it, dogs are just way better. So thanks, Alex. Quick intro done. I'm going to now hand over to Sir Ed Bassett. whose official title is something like Chief Officer of Wanderlust or something. Yeah, Ed, please take it away.
I don't know what that is. That was our PR firm. Can you hear me all right? Because I'm getting a terrible lag on the line. How's that sound?
You're good.
There is a lag. When I stop speaking, I will give Alex a chance to respond because I tend to go quickly when I'm excited. So, that sounds a bit odd. So I know Alex. Welcome, Alex. We've talked before. I've known you for a while.
Sorry.
See, there we go. The laugh came in. The laugh came in about 3 minutes after I said the jokes, which is kind of, it's like being in a bad stand-up, like the Comedy Store in Leicester Square, 1993. All right, welcome, Alex. So we've got Alex Flynn with us, and Alex is, as I was saying, and I hope you heard, I've known Alex for a while, and Alex has got a very, very powerful story about resilience, endurance, and mindset. And a load of other things, hopefully, we're going to talk to you about. So I think the first question to ask, really, Alex, is let's hear a little bit about Alex Flynn, your sort of background, where you were brought up, something personal, just to get us going, to get to know you.
I'm a 49-year-old adventurer. I have Parkinson's disease since 2008, and I was a lawyer. I still am a lawyer, but I'm not working as a lawyer. I'm running around the planet, generally doing the more interesting and challenging events that you can find to raise money and awareness for Parkinson's disease and hopefully make a difference to people's lives and prove that everyone, irrespective of disability, can be extraordinary.
Can you just talk about, for people that don't know, what is Parkinson's and how you found out?
Parkinson's is about rigidity. It's about slowly losing everything that you take for granted in life. The ability to walk, talk, speak, write, feed yourself, pick up a penny off the floor, dress yourself, everything and anything. It's a bit like being slowly encased in concrete over many, many years. And the shaking that you're seeing at the moment isn't my tremor. No, it's just my arms are moving because of my medication. My medication, when I take it, after many years, I've been taking it for over almost 14 years now. And when I take my medication, I jiggle a little bit, not as bad as an 8-legged octopus as some people do, but I can tell my dopamine receptors in my brain have been hypersensitized, and therefore movement becomes a little bit disorientated and overt and a bit extreme sometimes. So that makes it interesting. So for me, Parkinson's is about battling rigidity like many others, but also trying to push myself further than most to prove a point that we can all be extraordinary.
Yeah, we absolutely, that is, I've spoken to you before about this, and that word extraordinary will come up a few times in this conversation. And I think really, what would you say that the main misunderstandings are about Parkinson's, do you think, that people have?
Honestly, I think the main misunderstanding about Parkinson's is the fact that people think it's an old person's disease. I like to think of it as the friend you don't want, who wants to give you a hug, wants to give everybody a hug. And unfortunately, 1 in 15 are going to experience it within their lifetime. It's the fastest neurologically growing neurological disease in the world. And it's frightening. The youngest ever diagnosed was 2 years old. And just think about that. 2 years old, and what kind of life is that kid going to have? Kids at school can be incredibly unkind and sometimes quite vicious in what they say and what they do. And if anybody's standing out from the crowd, especially somebody who can't control their limbs properly, or walks properly, or talks funny, is going to get the mick taken out of them morally. And, that can be so damaging. So I will put myself through brick walls to make his life better than those of anyone else with neurological disease. Simple as that.
Thank you. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about Parkinson's, what you've done, and I think the fundraising, awareness raising, and what you're trying to do going forward in a minute. I think my next sort of question would be really around taking you back to 2008. I know you've done a huge amount of activity and run some I want to hear about that in a second. But that 2008 period in your life, it would be very understandable for anyone listening to you, and you are becoming the guy with Parkinson's, and that's not meant disrespectfully. A lot of people hear your story. The question I have is, when you first found out, what was your initial reaction? What was it?
In all honesty, I was numb. It was more of shock. I'd just been hit by this diagnosis like being hit by a bus. And quite frankly, I was knocked for six. I didn't know what to do. My wife, who was next to me, was falling apart. I was saying thank you to the guy who just told me I got a chronic neurologically degenerative disease that has currently no cure and will manage your descent into chaos in your life through medication that's really not going to change any course of action that the disease is going to take. And I'm thanking the guy, and I'm thinking to myself, this is completely messed up. And I walked out the door of the consulting room with my wife, and I phoned my mum, and I said, Mum, I've been told I've got Parkinson's disease. There goes my dog making noise in the background. And she said, "Oh God, I'm so sorry." And I said something stupid out of my mouth, like, "It's picked the wrong guy to mess with. It shouldn't put. This is going to be different. This is going to be tough, but I'm gonna get through this." And then I went home and wikied Parkinson's, and that was just the most dumb thing ever to do, because the list of symptoms are legion, and what you have to understand is you're not going to get every single one of these symptoms. It's all unique to the person, which makes it almost designer disease. Some people will get tremor. Some people will get dystonia, which is involuntary muscle contractions. Some will get bradykinesia, etc. And the list goes on. And I was in an absolute dark place for a number of months. I was almost like an automaton. I would go to work, wouldn't really concentrate, get the job done, go home, sit in the corner and mull over dark thoughts about what the hell was I going to do with my life, and is it over, and the rest of it. And then it wasn't until my kids turned around to me and said, "You okay, Dad? We love you, Dad. It's going to be all right, Dad." Not understanding what I was going through, that I worked out that I got to get myself better. I've got to pick myself up and get exercising. I've got to do something about this, because if I can't help myself, I can't help them. And if I can't help them, I can't help others. And that's where it all stemmed from.
What I find so incredible is that, life is difficult. Yeah, life, we all have challenges. We all deal with mortality, and we all deal with bereavement. We deal with illness. We deal with minor things like losing a job and things that happen to everyone. And what I think is so incredible, and why this story resonates with me and so many people, is that from what I see, Alex, you had a couple of choices to make. And not only did you choose to respond positively, and we'll find out what you then went on to do, but you, after a dark period, you decided to turn this into a positive in a way that life is really about purpose and legacy. And whatever happens going forward, the achievements you've done in 12 years are a lifetime. In fact, 10 lifetimes of what the average normal person, shall we say, even dreams about achieving. And I think it is just inspiring for many, many different reasons. And there's plenty more to go, right? That's why we're here to talk. We're here to promote this inspiration to people to move. Your hashtag is keep moving. And we're here to spread the message that there's more to come from Alex. So that's incredible. I want the listeners to absorb what you have done in 12 years. And this list is awesome. So let's hear what you have done, which will inspire us all to get moving.
Well, I took all the negativity, bile, frustration, anger, primarily anger, and pushed it through a metaphorical sieve and pulled out positivity. So I'd already signed up to do the Marathon des Sables, which is a 150-mile foot race across the Sahara Desert back in 2007. And getting diagnosed in 2008, I was left with coming out of my dark phase by thinking I'm going to do this, and then actually having doubts and thinking, what the hell am I doing? I'm supposed to run 150 miles across the Sahara Desert with Parkinson's. Am I nuts? So I did the country to capital 45. It took me 10 hours to run the 45 miles in horizontal rain, ice cold temperature, ice, water, mud, animal poo. It was fantastic. It was just fantastic. And
Sounds like a Friday night in Stoke-on-Trent, Alex.
I couldn't say.
I might get in trouble for that later.
But coming back to the MDS, I went out in 2009, and they were the biggest storms in the Sahara Desert for 12 years. And they washed away cars, roads, trucks, and they reorganized the course. And of course, I went and got lost on the third day, which was the longest day after passing out. I came to, and they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to continue racing." And I set off into the desert on my own and got completely lost in 9.75 million square miles of Sahara Desert with 1.5 liters of water and all the dry food in the world. I won't tell you how I got out of that predicament, but I did. But that's in my book, which needs to be published. So if anyone's listening, I'd like you to, if you know a publisher that's brave enough to handle a book like mine, then that would be fantastic. But nonetheless, I ended up getting taken out of the Marathon des Sables in 2009 with a heart infection. The pain in my heart, pain in my chest, and the reason why I passed out was because I had viral pericarditis. Your heart sits in a fleshy sac called the pericardium, which can get infected and swells up and squeezes your heart, effectively like a pair of hands, squishing and squishing and squishing your heart. And I was running with 14 kilo on my back. And when the doctors found out the next day, because they thought I was having a heart attack, and they did an echocardiogram and discovered I'd got viral pericarditis, they said, "You should be dead. I'm just lucky to be alive." So I went back to the UK, and I was sat having a cup of tea with my friend Rich Murray one day. And he said, "Well, you've raised about 1,500 quid for Parkinson's UK. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to raise £1 million." He said, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "Well, I'm going to run 1 million meters, and £1 a meter makes me a math genius on £1 million." He said, "That's only 620 miles, mate. We run a bit." He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go 10 million meters, 10 times that number." And he said, "Yeah, and only the races count." I said, "You bastard." And the rest is history. I went from there to run 160 miles across the Bavarian Alps in 52 hours with an hour and a half sleep. I did go back and do the MDS again and became 529th out of over 1,100 competitors. I ran and traversed 1,457 miles from London to Rome via Brussels and Paris within 30 days. 400 miles of that was stress fracture right tibia, and did the first 20 marathons in 10 days. I crossed 3,256 miles of America in 35 days using 4 different disciplines, became the first guy ever to do so. And I crossed the Amazon jungle, the Dolomites in Italy, and the Colorado Rockies within 8 weeks. And I've done about a distance of 270 marathons and so much more.
Well, maybe in the book we can just point people to Amazon when we get the book done. I mean, I think anyone listening knows what you've achieved, and it's just it's mind blowing. Every time I hear the list, actually, I think, gosh, I've done a couple of marathons, no big deal. No big deal. Just an incredible for someone who's quite active like myself. I look at it and go, I know 20 marathons in 10 days. It takes me 10 days to recover from one, and I used to be and am a reasonably fit guy. So I think anyone who's done a marathon will be open, mouth wide open, really, at that kind of achievement. And I think the question I've got is, well, the Parkinson's, how does that physically impact? Is that impacting you more now in terms of the races as you've gone along? Is it getting harder to do those kind of races? Yeah, talk about that, please.
Well, for example, after I finished my 10 million meters, there was a period of time where I didn't do very much. I was organizing to try and row across the Pacific, and I think 2016 came along, and I'd already failed to get the finance together in 2014 to row the Pacific, but 2016 came along, and we were £30,000 short of the 150,000 that we needed to get the boat over there, pick the boat up, get the cameras on board the boat. They were going to be 24 hours a day on there. And for a number of personal reasons, it didn't happen, which I won't go into on here. But I got to a point where I was struggling to find a suitably tough, daft and difficult thing to do. So I tried to do, you remember the 22 push-up challenge? 22 push-ups a day for 22 days.
Yeah, I remember hearing about
Do a
that.
bit of math, and you times it 20 by 20, 20 by 22, you get something like 5,566, which was the target for doing 5,566 press-ups in 22 days. I managed 3,873 in 18 days before my shoulder gave out, And then I had interesting excitement by going to the Kungsleden Trail in northern Sweden in the Arctic Circle at minus 29 degrees centigrade to do an unsupported traverse of the 470 kilometers of Kungsleden King's Trail. And that was epic. But I managed to rip one of my tendons in my right foot on the first 5 kilometers, pulling a 135-pound Parkinson 10K backpack. So I got the gaffer tape out of the pulk, gaffer tape my leg, and carried on across 2 mountain passes and a couple of frozen lakes for another 30 miles before us getting hypothermia, which was an experience.
In true David Goggins style, taping yourself back up, as your tibia, as your things are falling out of your body. Brilliant.
Yeah, completely.
I was thinking Monty Python, 'tis but a mere flesh wound.
Flesh wound, yeah.
Alex, can you describe, I think for most people listening to that kind of stuff, they'll be thinking, wow, I don't think that I'd do that. Can you describe what it's like for you kind of emotionally and mentally when you start to face those difficulties? What is your actual experience? Like, what is going through your mind? Because you obviously still feel the pain and discomfort, but what do you do that helps you keep going?
Good question. I'd answer it this way. When I discovered that I had a busted leg, stress fractured right tibia, while crossing Europe, every footfall was like a piece of 2x4 being smashed into my shin, again and again and again and again and again. And you get to a point where you can't see the edge of the pain, and I'll describe that as, I'll give an example. When you stub your toe against an edge of a desk or something, you can say, "I'll hold on for a second because the pain will subside." That's the edge of the pain. When you've got a stress fracture right tibia and you're constantly running on tarmac, bang, 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 there is no edge to the pain. It's just constant pain. And you've got to do something with that pain. So you create a white room in your head that's always light. There are no windows, and there's a door to that room. So you open the door, and in the room is just a box. And you take the pain, you visualize the pain you've got. It's all consuming and all engrossing. Every footfall, bang, 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 bang. You take that pain and you visualize it, and you stuff it into the box. You shut the lid on the box, and you lock the box, and you walk out the door, you shut the door, and you lock the room. And believe it or not, that visualization technique actually helps with pain. Not a lot, but it just takes that edge off it. That really makes a difference. The most challenging event that I've actually undertaken probably was equally shared between two, which was in 2018, which was Primal Quest. I had about 20 days notice before having to race, and I was really not prepared. Practically killed me. I came out of that with 2 broken ribs and a bulging disc into my spine, which cut off feeling to my right hand and right arm. I still finished the 240 miles within 4 days and 5 hours with Mike Closser, 5-time world bench racing champion, Chris Paisley, and Anna Jones. And we did fantastically well, considering the fact that I was not prepared and, winging it, as it were. So thanks to them. But I think one of the toughest I've actually come across was climbing my own stairs to 2.3 times the height of Everest in 7 days, just over 7 days, first lockdown. And, I was thinking that people are running around their gardens for a marathon. So I thought I'd just do a vertical marathon, which equated to 2.3 times the height of Everest. But if you think about it, there's a marathon going up, 2.3 times the height of Everest, and there's a marathon going down, which is 2.3 times the height of Everest. So effectively, I did 4.6 times the height of Everest, if you think about it.
Alex.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. The thing you said about it feels like slowly put into concrete sounds so terrifying. How you ever come back from that, I don't know. But I heard you talk in Clubhouse, and I think I asked you, have you always been this determined? Have you been this determined from birth, or did the determination come from the diagnosis?
I think I was determined from a little boy. My upbringing was interesting, to say the least. And one of the things I discovered when I was a kid, that I was able to withstand an enormous amount of pain. I'll give you the example. My bed when I was a kid was up against an old wall in the house. Grew up in this old country house with lead paint on the walls and crumbly paint on the walls, and my bed was up against this wall. And every night I'd toss and turn like most kids do, and my sheets and blankets would come undone from the side of the wall, and the wall would be cold and it would wake me up. So I'd get repeatedly thrust my hand down the side of the bed to push the blankets and sheets back down so I wouldn't get cold. But one time I did it too abruptly, and I got basically a whole load of paint all the way up to the root of my nail on my index finger, underneath my nail. Now, I was 5 years old at the time, so without waking my parents up, because I didn't want to wake my dad up, I went into the bathroom, climbed up on the side, undid the bathroom medicine cabinet, took out a needle, took out some surgical spirit, cleaned the needle, and then dug with a needle all the paint out from underneath my nail, right to the root of my nail, without making a noise. Then I re-cleaned the needle, re-surgical spirited my finger, bound my finger up with toilet paper, and put the needle back, shut the medicine cabinet door, and went back to bed. I didn't make a sound.
And that's incredible. And you remind me of my brother, actually, because he is like a tank. He broke his elbow once and just carried on. He's a builder, just carried on. 5 years later, he couldn't move his elbow. And then he went to get it x-rayed, and the bone had grown over. And then he had to go to surgery to get it. So he was basically, the story is he was walking around with a broken elbow, carrying on building and constructing and hod carrying, and then had to get the bone chipped off. The surgeon said he'd never used so many saws to get the bone chipped off and his elbow released. And it sounds to me like you're that tank-like person, you just seem to drive through everything. That's nothing to do with the Parkinson's. It's just the character that you are.
Well, I've had I broke both my ankles twice over, walked around with them till they healed, thinking that I'd stupidly sprained my ankles, but no. And what we do is we run sprains off, but you rest a broken ankle, and of course I didn't. I just carried on. So my ankles are interesting.
Yeah, so you just got that determination. And the other thing I just wanted to say was, so you went from quite a privileged position, being a lawyer, probably quite a high flyer, I'm assuming, and then got diagnosed. So that position of privilege changed enormously for you. Did it make you...
Yeah.
How was that for you?
I come from a career that was paying enough for me to be able to have a certain amount of latitude, but it wouldn't last forever. And it has been hard. I've spent many years putting hand to mouth to achieve what I want to achieve. And I think the underlying concept here is people need to understand my why. Everybody understands the what and the how, but why is the question of what I'm doing. When you understand someone's why, you understand what motivates them. So my why is this, that when people have Parkinson's or neurological disease, their world gets intrinsically smaller. And when it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, you lose your self-worth, you lose your sense of confidence, your sense of place in society, and you suddenly become invisible. Everything becomes much smaller and smaller on a day-by-day basis. And I want to prove to people with Parkinson's and or people with disability and public at large that disability is no barrier to being extraordinary. That people can get back their sense of self-worth, their sense of self-confidence, the sense of being part of society again. Even if that's just getting across their living room. If that's their Everest, then great, crack on, do it. Because by doing that, that's much more worthwhile than anything I could ever do. I'm very lucky, and I understand exactly where I am at this moment and where my disease is going. My condition, I should say, because we don't like calling it a disease. We call it condition. I'm incredibly lucky to be where I am at the moment, as advanced as I am in years with the disease. to be able to do what I do, even though I might be a bit shakier now than I was then. And if I can make change happen for people so that they seize control back of their lives and push themselves that little bit further, and I raise money for better treatments because I'm raising money for Parkinson's UK in the UK and Europe and Parkinson's Foundation in America, because the two of them have got together and formed a biotech to make treatments available in years, not decades. That's going to be something, because if we can have better treatments than ones that that are toxic for people with Parkinson's to take and have adverse side effects like dyskinesia, involuntary movement, and extenuated tremor, which are emotionally and socially embarrassing. If we can have them in years, not decades, that to me is terrific, because people with Parkinson's like me don't have decades. I don't have a long life look ahead of me. I live in the moment. Somehow I think that's spurred me on to take a venture to heart and seize every opportunity with both hands and take it as far as it can go. And if I can do that, make a difference and change people's lives and create positivity where there's none, and create hope and try and live as good a life as I can, then if I turn up at the pearly gates and St. Peter looks at me and says, "Man, you lived a life," I'll have done my job.
Thank you, Alex. That is an amazing answer. I mean, you hear this all the time, I imagine. You're an absolute inspiration and an ambassador for living life. Every day, live the life that you want to live, and just grasp each second that you have and enjoy every moment of it, come
Absolutely.
what may. And I think, so thank you so much. And thank goodness for children, because the children are the things that keep you going, isn't it? And they're our future. So yeah, thank goodness you had children.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, it's been really good to hear from you, Alex. And if people want to find out a little bit more about what you're up to,
I'm going to climb and summit Mount Everest next year. That's the plan. And to manifest it by saying that I'm going to do it makes it more real and more achievable. It's not going to be an easy piece of cake. It's going to be probably the hardest thing I'll ever do. And I want to put Parkinson's on top of the world. I want to be able to plant that memory into people's minds and raise awareness on a global scale. And to do that, I have to climb Mont Blanc, Mont Mera Peak, and Mont Himlung before I climb Mount Everest to get the altitude experience that's necessary to actually take on a mountain as big as Everest, because there isn't anything bigger. So hopefully, I'll say hopefully, I will get the financial support to be able to do this, changing hearts and minds, raising enormous amounts of money for Parkinson's research, and inspiring many people to try and push their envelope that just a little bit further every single day. That's me.
Alex, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing to hear your story. And I think whilst I don't want to keep listeners or people too much longer, this is my 10-second piece on this. I think what I would encourage people to do is, if you are listening, use this to empower you. Don't use it to think, Alex is doing all this and he's got Parkinson's and I'm so fucking lazy I don't even get off the sofa. The point is not to say how amazing is Alex. Obviously he is amazing. But the point is that use this as fuel for your fire. So wherever you are now, use it as inspiration and start small. Use it as positivity to build you up, not as something to a bar to compare you against or a benchmark to feel jealous about. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for coming on, Alex. It's been amazing. If people want to find out more about you, I know if you just Google Alex Flynn, then it comes up. But yeah, any donations would be incredibly appreciated. But also if you just want to find out a little bit more. So Alex, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for allowing me to speak and present my story. And thanks for the support, guys, and keep moving.
Keep moving. That's what we like to hear. Thanks both. Thanks, Becca. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And obviously, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one. And head over to calltoadventure.uk for show notes. But otherwise, look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Head over to Call to Adventure, that's TO, calltoadventure.uk for show notes and more about this episode. You'll also find lots of other free content there. Things like how-to guides and gear reviews, everything to get you out on your next adventure. We've also got loads of adventures for you to join us on in the UK and abroad. We've got things like climbing, hiking, mountaineering, surfing, wild swimming, ski touring, and we're adding new ones all the time, so do take a peek. Each booking helps us fund our green mission, and all international trips are carbon offset. Please do rate and review the show if you're enjoying it. It helps get more people engaged with the outdoors and on board with protecting wild places. Thanks for listening. See you next time.